Okay, so today we're going to continue Ma'amar Shelishi, the third section of Sefer HaKuzari. To remind you, previously we were talking about what we can basically summarize under the title of Jewish mindfulness, right? That the Torah comes to educate us to not just passively live our lives and drift through this world, but to live our lives with intention, right? When we eat a fruit, bore peri ha'es, we stop, right? We have to be conscious of what we're doing, right? Everything we do always to bring, we call it God consciousness into our lives. We discussed last time about even, when we go to the bathroom. So before we go, we're kind of like addressing the angels, telling them, please wait for me for a minute, right? Because I am human. This is the way of humans. And then we re-engage with those angels when we come back out and we say the beracha, asher yasar, right? And what are these angels that we're engaging with? These are our reminders that the Torah and the Chachamim put in our ways all the time, right? Like the mezuzah, right? Everything that the Torah puts in our ways in order to make us stop from our routine for a second and think about who we are, what we're doing, Yehud Hashem, right? To think about God and to always be living in this consciousness of God. We're going to continue that a little bit today, and we're going to take a little detour into the idea of kavvanot, intention, right? Correct intention, and also wrong and incorrect intention. And I'm going to apologize in advance. Some of the things I may say, some of you may not like, and I concede, I admit that my opinion is a very, very, we'll call it minority opinion, and most teachers and most people that you'll ask will probably disagree with me, but I'm going to state my opinion and, take it or leave it, assess it yourselves, examine, ask others what they think, and form your own opinion. Okay, so let's continue, first of all, with Sefer HaKuzari. So we finished at 11, right? And basically, right, tradition teaches that at minimum daily obligation of praise consists of 100 blessings. All right, the Hachamim, they made a halacha. Hayav adam nevarech 100 pa'amim beyom. 100 times a day you need to make a blessing. Now when you pray, Shemoneh Esrei has 18 blessings, right? They do it with Chazara, that's already double. 3 times a day, you're already, just by going to Tefillah 3 times a day, you already cover a very big part of that. And then you have Birkot HaShachar, right? When you wake up in the morning, right away you have a list of berachot to say. You eat, you say berachot. Throughout the day, it's not that difficult to get to 100 berachot a day. All right? All this is, again, to bring God consciousness and make us aware of what we're doing throughout our lives. And the king of Kuzar, he says, in this way, a person can live happily even in exile, even though we are in very difficult circumstances for the past 2,000 years, up until less than 100 years ago, right? Even so, that we are in difficult circumstances, a person can still enjoy his life by being aware of all the blessings in his life. He enjoys the fruits of his faith, both in the world and in the world to come. But one who endures the exile unwillingly loses both rewards, the benefit of this life and the next. Right? It's very different life you live when you're aware of all the blessings in your life and not always just focused on how difficult my life is, right? His joy deepens, and even his hope is strengthened when he hears the question, can these bones live? Remember, we were talking about Yehezkel, right? And God asked him, you see this pit full of dry bones, can these bones live? And we discussed how this is a mashal, a parable of the Jewish nation, who is now kind of like a dead nation. That's how we were regarded by all the nations, like a dead nations. Can we really come back to life through the obligation to recite blessings over everything he enjoys or that happens to him in this world? So yes, we can come back to life because we're not truly dead. We are, while everyone else may be a strong nation, right? Maybe they're rich, but they're not really living life on the same level that a person who has this mindfulness and goes through life consciously is living. And so the Kuzarri says, our blessing's not an added burden. 100 times a day we need to stop what we're doing to say a blessing. I'm trying to live my life, to go, I go to the supermarket, I go to this. 100 times a day, you're going to make me stop to say a blessing. It's not such a burden. Is it not fitting that a complete human being should derive greater pleasure from what he experiences than a child or an animal? Just as an animal enjoys nourishment more than a plant, even though the plant is constantly sustained. What's the point he's trying to make? It's actually here. What the Kuzari is going to say here, right? That is because a human being possesses awareness of his enjoyment. If a drunken man were given everything he desired while completely intoxicated, if he ate, drank, listened to music, met his friends, and embraced his beloved, he would still gain nothing from it. When sober and told what had happened, he would feel regret rather than joy, because all those pleasures occurred while he was incapable of appreciating them. What's the difference between a mindful person, someone who lives his life with intention, and someone who's just drifting through life and not stopping to think of what he has? It's like someone who is drunk, who he's enjoying, he's kind of enjoying his time while he's drunk, but he can't recall any of it afterwards. If he were sober and aware of what's going on, right, that's a much higher level of enjoyment than being told afterwards all the great things that he experienced. Oh, you remember there was this great music. So I don't remember, I was drunk. The effect doesn't stay with you. When you're going through life with intention and you stop and you pause to realize what's in front of you, right, then you enjoy it much better. And at last, it has a much longer lasting effect. Anticipating a pleasure, experiencing it, and then looking forward to it again. All of this doubles and deepens the enjoyment. This is the benefit of blessings of one who recites them with attention and sincerity. They awaken in his soul gratitude and delight towards the giver. A moment earlier, he was prepared to forego the pleasure. Now his joy is heightened, and he says, he has kept us alive and sustained us, right? Zahazan betuvo. He had been prepared for death. Now he experiences life as a gift and sees it as pure gain, right? When you go to sleep at night, it's as if you're giving up your life, right? The Midrash says it's as if you're partially dead, and then you wake up again, right? We view every single day that we wake up as if God breathed our soul back into us and gave us another chance at life every single morning. That's the praise that we give to God. If illness or death should come, they will weigh lightly upon him because he has already reflected deeply and understands that what he truly gains is closeness to his Lord. Right? When you do mitzvot and you think about Yehud Hashem, every advancement or every deepening of your understanding that you gain is another step closer to God. So when bad things happen to you, doesn't matter if you're sick or even has v'shalom to the point of death, that knowledge, that closeness to God is still there and intact. It's permanent. It lives on forever. By the way, this is when you read Eov, when you study Eov, right, and the Satan is talking to God, right, and God kind of gives the Satan permission. He says, "Go, do what you want to Eov. I'm going to show you that he still loves me, and he's not going to say anything bad about me, right?" But he says, I'm giving you dominion over everything, all of the circumstances of Eov. You can make him poor. You can even afflict him with sickness. But he says, "Ach et nafsho shemor." He says, however, his nefesh, right, meaning his intellect, his spirit, with the closeness of God that he has already received, right, you have no dominion over that. And the Rambam, when he talks about Perashat Eov, he says all of these troubles that Eov suffered, right, the reason why he felt the suffering was only because he wasn't fully formed yet in his understanding of God. And that's why at the end of Eov, he says, V'nihamtani al afar va'efer, right? He reaches his nehama at the end while he's still sitting in dirt and dust, while he's still in his pain, is because the whole story of Eov was to evolve him to a closer and better, deeper understanding of God. And when he received that understanding, nothing else mattered anymore. Even though he was still sick, even though his circumstances didn't change. He's like Am Yisrael in Galut, right? The circumstances were terrible. However, once we reach this deeper understanding of God, it doesn't matter anymore. We don't feel that affliction. We feel only that closeness to God. And only then, once he reached that level, was he able to overcome everything else. And then really he got better, right? He had a lot of children again, and he had all his wealth came back and doubled. By nature, man is only dust and could easily be deprived of pleasures, right? Man, the basic tendency of man is like we are a very, very fragile entity, organism. We're easily susceptible to any kind of sickness that can come, a disease, right? But when we understand that, and we understand that even though all of that, God has granted him life and desire and gives us all these great blessings in our life, only then can we really appreciate it. And he responds with gratitude. If those gifts are taken away, he says, the Lord has given and the Lord has taken away. Right? Hashem natan, Hashem lakach. We're back to Eov. Right? Yehi Shem Hashem evorach. Right? May the name of God be blessed, whether he gives or whether he takes away. And by the way, sometimes that taking away is the blessing itself, right? Maybe one day when we study Iyov again, we'll see how that was the point. The taking away from Iyov was in order to perfect him even more. When God destroyed the temple and sent us into exile, right? That was because we corrupted the meaning of the temple and we needed to let go of a wrong idea that we had. And only by going through Galut were we able to overcome that understanding. So Hashem Natan, God gives, and we bless him when he gives, and God takes away. And the halakha says, even when God takes things away, we have a blessing for that too, right? Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. In both ways, we praise and bless God. In this way, his entire life becomes an experience of joy, even the difficult parts. One who cannot live in this way does not experience truly human pleasure, but only animal pleasure, unconscious and unexamined, like the drunken man mentioned earlier, who enjoyed everything yet perceived nothing. The pious person, so what is the tzaddik, what is the hasid, according to the Kuzarri? The pious person understands the meaning of every blessing and knows its purpose in each context. Right? The hasid, he's going to eat an apple. He says, Baruch atah Hashem Eloheinu melech ha'olam borei peri ha'etz. And he knows what he's saying. When he prays, he knows what he's saying. He understands. When he recites the blessing, right, who forms the lights, right, before the Shema, right, we have two blessings before and two blessings after. The first one is, right, the Yotzer Or, right, who creates the light, who forms the light. He reflects on the order of the cosmos, the grandeur of the heavenly bodies, and their usefulness. He understands how the world, the more you understand how the world works, you understand how the stars work, you understand the orbits, you understand the structure, and you're able to reflect on that, right? Then you can really appreciate, while remembering that before they're created, they are no greater than worms. They appear immense only because of the benefit we derive from them. The same wisdom and power that fashioned the sun and its sphere are also visible in the creation of the ant and the bee. To us, the sun seems to be such a great, huge entity. It enlightens the entire world, right? So, well, we give praise, but when you really think about it, the wisdom that is in the sun, that created the sun, is the same wisdom that's if you examine an ant and a bee, right? They're complex systems. You need to focus in order to understand. You need to study biology in order to understand how ant colonies and bee colonies work. In fact, divine wisdom is even more astonishing in the ant and the bee, for despite their minuteness, they are endowed with intricate organs and faculties. What's easier to make, something big or something small? Right? The truth is, to God, it's all the same. Humans think that the sun is this huge, amazing thing, and it's true, it is. There's great wisdom in it, right? But not to the point of worshiping the sun. The same intellect that went into and wisdom that went into the sun goes into everything in the universe. He keeps his mind so that the light of the sun does not overwhelm him or mislead him, into adopting the beliefs of those who worship celestial forces. He does not imagine that the sun or the moon can help or harm independently. There's a reason why I kept the actual Hebrew here. It says, Ve'yifatehu yitzro, and the person's inclination will seduce him into thinking, like Yifatehu yitzro hara b'miksat ashkafot ba'aleh haruhaniyut, in the ideas of those who believe in this philosophy, this world philosophy called the ruhaniyut, spirituality. And we're going to go a little bit into that soon. All right? But what do they essentially say? What is the ruhaniyut? And this was the prevalent philosophy of the entire pagan world, right? Is that all of these beings, all of these entities, they have a ruach, they have a spirit. And we need to worship these entities because they are so powerful, they guide the world, they guide the universe. And then they started building statues to them, and they built statues, and they believed that by building a statue, and when they consecrate the statue, they are bringing that spirit of that entity into the statue. And then they would worship the statue as the medium to that entity. So he does not imagine that the sun or moon can help or harm independently, right? With the berachot and Yotzer Or is coming to really substantiate in our mind isn't just thanking God for putting luminaries so that we can see, so that we have daytime and nighttime, but that He guides all of these celestial beings and they're all bound by His will. They don't have an independent will. None of the stars dictate to us what our life is going to look like. That's astrology. And that is asur to think that way, according to the Rambam and the Rabbi Yehuda HaLevi. That is, or that comes from the ideology of the ruhaniyut, the spirituality. Essentially, what they say is that God is the spirit of the universe. And so, same way that we have a flesh body and a spiritual side to us, right? And maybe this is where everyone gets the Kuzarri wrong when they think when Rabbi Yehuda HaLevi discusses ruhani and spiritual, he really means intellectual, right? But they believe that the same way that man has a physical side and a non-physical side, says the universe itself has also a physical body, which is the physical universe around us, and it has a spirit, and God is the spirit of the universe. And so worshiping all these different spirits in the universe is essentially worshiping God through a medium. And by the way, the word mazal, what they used for astrology, right? The word mazal itself comes from the word nazal, meaning came down. Why? Because they believe that they're bringing down the spirit of a celestial being, as great as it is, into a physical object that they created. That it could be contained within it, and they'd worship it through that. That's literally what mazal means. And along with this outlook, this philosophy, we'll call it the pagan philosophy of the ancient world, right? There comes many different different beliefs that are completely or originally completely foreign to Judaism. However, unfortunately, some of these beliefs have uh, dripped into Judaism, and many people today believe them, right? Such as the belief in reincarnation, right? That a person's soul or spirit can transfer from one person to another after death. And I brought here what Rabbi Saadia Gaon, one of our oldest and greatest Hachamim, the head of the yeshivot in Spain, right? Just want to show you. It says, Vehineni Omer. Says, and I say, this is like later in his sixth section where he deals with the human nefesh, right? He has one chapter dedicated to this belief. Vehineni Omer, and I see that yesh ki anashim, there are people mimi shenikraim Yehudim that call themselves Jewish. Says mitzaatim ma'aminim begilgul, that they believe in this concept of Gilgul, reincarnation, v'kurim oto hahi'atkut, and they call it transference, ve'inyano leda'atam, ruach Reuven tiyeh b'Shimon, right? And they believe that the spirit of Reuven can transfer into Shimon, ve'achar kach b'Levi, and then it'll transfer into Levi, right? Of course, after they die, it'll transfer to someone else. Ve'achar kach b'Yehuda, then it will go, every generation will go into a different person. Umehem orubam, and some of them, maybe even the majority of them, sovrim sheyesh tiyeh ruach ha'adam b'behema. Some of them even think that the spirit of a human can enter into an animal. Like they'll say, this cat is a gilgul of some great rabbi from 10 generations ago. Veruach behema ba'adam, or the spirit of an animal into a man. This is less commonly heard today. Udvarim rabbim min hazayot halalu v'habilbunim. And many such hazayot means what's the word hazayot? Bilbunim means confusion. Hazayot is like fabrications. ונתברר לי מה שמדמים שהוא הביאם לידי דבר הזה, right? And when I examine these ideas and these people, what brought them to think or to believe in these things? ומצאתים ארבע טעויות. Says there are four main mistakes that led them to believe in this belief of reincarnation. וראיתי להזכירם ולהשיב עליהם. And so I want to mention what their mistakes are, and I'm going to respond to those mistakes. Right? Vereshit, the first, the primary cause of this wrong belief, כל החזקתם בשיטת הרוחניות, is they maintain this belief, this philosophical outlook of ruhaniyut, what we call today ruchnius or spirituality, that there are spiritual beings out there, actual beings, right? Not what we think of angels as intellects, right? But they're actual like ghosts or demons that inhabit the universe that we just can't see with our eyes, right? Kol ahzakatam b'shitat ruhaniyut, that they believe in this outlook of life called ruhaniyut, spirituality. V'shalosh shitot acherot, and three others, right? You said there's four. We're only here going to go into the ruhaniyut. What is the shitat ruhaniyut? ומי שלא יודע ממניחה שיטת הגלגול, right? למדו משיטת השניות הרוחנית. Alright, so what is this ruhaniyut? In the Moreh Nevuchim, there's a gloss at the end in the old editions that explains what is ruhaniyut, just in two words. Hayu hakofrim, it says, the heretics of the Torah, hayu hakofrim ma'aminim shekochot hakochavim yachulu b'selamim, that forces or the spirits of the stars, the celestial beings, would enter into the images, the statues. Shayu osim l'shem hakochavim, right, that they used to make for the sake of the stars, uba asherot, and in the trees, there are certain trees that they plant for the honor of a certain star, and the spirit of that star would enter it, uba asherot shayu notim nishman, that they would plant in their names. Vayu choshvim shatzelamim va'asherot ahem, and they used to think that these statues and these trees יודעים העתידות על דרך נבואה וידברו עמם, that because they possess the spirit of these beings, they know the future and they can prophesize, right? This is what the false prophets were. They would prophesize or they would seemingly prophesize in the name of a certain tree and statue. And this, the Moreh, the Rambam talks about how this was the belief of the entire ancient world in the times of Abraham Avinu. And this was what Abraham Avinu came to contradict. It says, Yadua, שאברהם אבינו עליו השלום גדל באמונת הסבא. The Saba, or the Saba, that was the name of a nation that spread these ideas out. It says Abraham Avinu grew up in this kind of tradition, right? The whole world at his time believed in the beliefs of the Saba. ודעתם שאין אלוה רק הכוכבים, that there is no God, it's only the celestial beings and their spirits. וכשהודיעך בפרק הזה ספריהם הנמצאים עתה בידינו, says, and in this chapter I'm going to go over their literature, all the books that I found, I'm going to go over their literature in order to explain to you what they believe. אשר נעתקו ללשון הערב, right, that were copied and translated into Arabic, ודברי הימים שלהם הקדומים, and their ancient history, ואגלה לך דעתה מהם, וענייניהם יתבהר לך אומרם, and you'll see that what they say is, בביאור הכוכבים שהם האלוהות, right, that these stars, these celestial beings, they are gods, ושהשמש הוא האלוה הגדול, and the greatest of all of these gods is the sun. וכך אמרו עוד ששאר הכוכבים החמישה, that the other five, or the five visible planets that they had there, אלוהות, are also gods, אבל שני המאורות הם יותר גדולים. But the two great luminaries, the sun and the moon, those are the strongest of the gods. ותמצאם אומרים בביאור שהשמש הוא אשר ינהיג העולם העליון והשפל, ובזה הלשון אמרוהו. All right, so all right, ותכלית מה שהגיע אליו עיון מי שהתפלסף בזמנים ההם, and he says, and the idea of those who would start to philosophize, meaning to rationalize, think critically and rationally, right, שידמה שהאלוה, and what they thought, their philosophers, their wise men then, what they said, right, it started with saying, שהאלוה רוח הגלגל, that the God is the spirit of the universe. ושהגלגל, in the universe, והכוכבים and the stars, הם הגוף, they are the body, the physical body of God. ואלוה יתברך רוחו, and God is its spirit. והזכר זה אבו בכר ben Alzei, is talking about a well-known Muslim philosopher, בפירוש ספר השמה, ולזה האמינו הסבא כולם כדמות העולם. Says, and that's why all of the pagan beliefs rested on believing that the world was always eternal. Because if spirituality is eternal and the physical universe is God's physical form, then one can't live without the other. All right, and this, right? So when we say Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz, but when we say Bereshit bara Elohim, God created the shamayim and the aretz. He created the physical universe, right? Vashamayim, when you say shamayim, is the non-physical universe. So if God created the physical and the non-physical, He is not the physical or the non-physical part of the universe. He is completely transcendent from the universe. And when this pillar of the world, we're talking about Abraham Avinu, went out, right? That there is a God that is transcendent, it is separated from the world, lo guf, not a physical form, velo koach beguf, and not a force or physical force, v'shekol elu hagalgalim v'hakochavim, and that all of these celestial beings and the universe itself, ma'asav, they are His creations. והבין שקורו שכרות ההבלים ההם, and he understood the lies that he's been educated on growing up in this civilization, אשר גדל עליהם, which he grew up on, התחיל לסתור אמונתם ולזייף דעותם. He started to contradict them, right? He would debate them and contradict them, ופרסם כנגדם, and he publicized the wrongness of their ways, and he called out in the name, V'kara b'shem Hashem el olam, in the name of God, Master of the universe. Kiriah shekolelet mitziut ha'eloah, right? It's a proclamation that includes both the existence of God, v'ithadesh ha'olam me'ito, and that the world was created at some point in time, was created by Him. It has a beginning. And okay, I won't go into all the rest of that. And from here comes many other beliefs as well. But it starts with believing that God is the spirit of the universe, right? This is the fundamental pagan belief. Now, when we say Adonai Elohenu, Adonai Echad, right? God, our Lord, is one. What are we saying? So every time we stop, every time we say Beracha, every time we kiss the mezuzah, every time we say Shema, right? We're saying, Baruch Atah Hashem, right? You, our God, Elohenu Melech HaOlam, right? Our Lord, our supreme Lord, Melech HaOlam, King or Lord of the universe, Borei Peri Ha'etz, creator of this fruit, this tree fruit or fruit from the ground, Borei Peri Adama. And we say Shema, right? Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, right? What does that mean when we say Boreh, that He's the creator, that He is not the spirit of the universe, that He created the universe? When we say that He is one, what are we saying? What does that mean, one God? It means there is no supreme authority. God has no physical form. The universe is not His physical form. So what's the real intention that we need to have when we say a beracha? Is to understand that God is transcendent from this universe, and He blessed us with all these things that He put, And these are all opportunities for us to reflect on everything that God created, right? Not part of, but created for us. And while the Hachamim back in the day instituted all of these berachot, right? You're talking about the men of the Great Assembly. They structured the tefillah for us. They made these berachot. They had this whole project to completely eradicate this pagan way of thinking, right? Unfortunately, if we fast forward to the 13th century, there was this new pagan philosophy that completely came into and hijacked the Torah itself. It dressed itself in clothes of the Torah and started to promote itself as if it's part of the Tanaic literature, and it came to reinstill this pagan belief into the Torah. All right, these are what we call today the Kabbalah, the Zohar. The Zohar and the Kabbalah comes to educate this pagan philosophy and addresses itself as if it's part of our Torah. And I know most people you ask aren't going to agree with me, and they may take offense at what I say, but I take offense at what the Zohar did and what the people who believe in the Zohar, or call it the priests of the Zohar, did in hijacking the Torah and and making Judaism a pagan religion, like it used, like the whole ancient pagan world used to be. What other beliefs come out of this Kabbalah besides what we said before? Reincarnation, this belief in the tzaddik emet, the true tzaddik, who is your supreme authority. You're not allowed to think without him. Everything he says is kodesh, right? They say kechol asher yurucha. Who are you to go against the tzaddik? Why is the tzaddik so great? It's because his soul comes from a higher place than yours. Not that everyone has this equal access to God, right? All men are created equal. Some men are created more equal than others. That's what reincarnation essentially is. That's what the soul of the tzaddik, the Rebbe, right, essentially is. He's not a wise man who studied Torah and can tell you and can teach you the laws, and he can prove his chain of tradition. Why is Kabbalah called Kabbalah? Kabbalah means tradition. The Talmud, the Rambam, Rabbi Yehuda HaLevi, they have a verified chain of tradition. We know every single person who carried this tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu until the Rambam. Who carried the tradition, this mysticism called the Zohar? Nobody knows. They say that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wrote it, but it was only discovered 1,100 years after he passed away. Who verified it? Nobody. Name me one person in that 1,100 years that knew of the existence of the Zohar. There's nobody. Nobody knows. There's 6 contradictory stories of how it was discovered. Nobody even knows how it was discovered. And then they come and they tell you that when you do a mitzvah, you need to have a certain kavvanot. But you're too stupid to know the kavvanot. Right? The kavvanot. Kavvanot ha'ari. You do the kavvanot. What's the kavvanot? No, it's some mystical understanding that nobody can know. Instead of thinking of God who created the universe, instead of thinking of What am I doing? Right? When you do a tefillah, they say, what's l'shem yichud? What is l'shem yichud? Anyone know? What's a cheder yichud? Cheder yichud, after the chupah, the chatan, and the kala, they go into this room. It's a cheder yichud where they are the two of them together. That's the cheder yichud. What does l'shem yichud mean? Kutsha b'richu, right? God, Kadosh Baruch Hu, u'shchinte, and the Shekhinah. Ask any Kabbalist. What does that mean? Kutsha b'richu is the male God. Shchinte is the female God.
Can you repeat that again, please?
So when they say, what is the meaning of l'shem yichud? L'shem yichud is to bring together the male and the female. Kutsha b'richu u'shchinte. Two different things. The Shekhinah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They call it the male and the female aspects of God. The Za'ir Anpin. What's a Za'ir Anpin? I'm sure you've heard this before, some of you. Za'ir Anpin is the short-tempered God, as opposed to the Arich Anpin, the long-tempered God. Trinity. Some of them believe in the Trinity. They say, Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. They say God is mentioned 3 times, and then it says one. It's 3, that's one. God is 3, that's one. Everything our Hachamim works
Can we ask a question now?
eradicate, right? Shitat HaRuhaniyut is an opposing philosophy and ideology to the ideology of Abraham Avinu, of Moshe Rabbeinu, of the Torah, and the one that Maimonides and the Rabbi Yehuda HaLevi are teaching and educating. Shitat HaRuhaniyut is essentially the what's the word? The opposite of monotheist, the polytheistic outlook of the universe. The Torah comes to teach the monotheistic outlook of the universe. Unfortunately, there are those who turned the Torah into a polytheistic version, or into a polytheistic religion, like a Jewish version of polytheism.
Question, Raf.
Yes, please.
With what authority to this day is the Zohar called, just like Ari and the Zohar, Hakadosh? Who gave that title, and why is it still standing?
The believers of that system, or we'll call it those promoting that system, are the ones who called it HaKadosh.
But where did that get started? How did that took
The
form?
Ari is from Tzfat. He has his students, Haim Vital,
Yes,
right?
but what I
Calls it.
mean, to this day, in our literature and in a lot of
Right. I'll tell you the truth. Like I said before, most people are going to disagree with me
no,
on what I
I'm
just
just
said.
curious. I'm not disagreeing. I'm trying to grasp.
So what happened was, and this is very, very unfortunate. This is, how do you call it? It's very typical of tyrannical societies. Any opposition to the Zohar was very quickly shut down through excommunication, through taking advantage of or reporting to the authorities, making them seem like they're heretics even to Christians. That there were many who were killed, people who lost their livelihood, people who lost their lives just for opposing the Zohar. Basically, all of pagan ideology comes down to you can't know the truth without me. Me being your priest or your Rebbe or your prophet, and the only one who can tell you the truth, as opposed to the Torah saying, right, Torah sivananu Moshe, Moshe commanded the Torah to all of us, Morasha Kehilat Yaakov. It's the legacy of the congregation of Yaakov. And who's able to learn the Torah and know the Torah? It says, "Ve'efshar she'idayim hakol." Everyone has equal access to the Torah. Anyone could learn it. Gadol ve'katan, right? A great wise man and a katan and also a child. Ish ve'isha, man and woman. Ba'alev rahav ve'ba'alev kasar, someone with great intellectual capacity and also someone with less great intellectual capacity. We all have equal access to the Torah to know what is forbidden, what is mutar, right? And we don't need someone to come and tell us that an angel spoke to them and told them, really, this is asur. Don't do this. We said we have a tradition. We follow the tradition. Don't come and corrupt our tradition.
Okay, another question regarding your line of thoughts, which I'm following very close because I'm learning. I'm not criticizing, I'm not questioning.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Please
Uh,
challenge.
no, no, I'm not challenging. I'm trying to put together the little that I've learned with what you're teaching now to make, for me, to make a foundation, to make something to
Yeah,
do more research.
perfect.
I like to know then all these rabbis and including Nachmanides, the Ramban, and all these giants in mysticism and Kabbalah or whatever you may want to call it, so or whatever. What do we do with them if they are? I'm not going to say promoting, but they started all these teachings. What?
Right.
How can we? I would say not put together, but harmonize that with the Judaism.
So the Ramban, Nachmanides specifically, he has a form of Kabbalah that's pre-Zohar. He, as a Kabbalist, never read the Zohar because the Zohar didn't exist when he was alive.
Correct.
Right? The Zohar only came around the 13th century. He was
Yes.
earlier.
Yeah.
They still had some form of a Kabbalah. By the way, we see Rabbi Yehuda Levi himself talks about Sefer Yetzirah, and not only that, Rabbi Saadia Gaon, who we read before regarding reincarnation, he has an entire commentary to Sefer Yetzirah. Right? So Sefer Yetzirah is an authentic book.
Is it from Abraham Avinu, like some claim?
It's ascribed to Avraham Avinu. He didn't actually write it. They say it passed down an oral tradition. It was written. It seems to have been written in the times of the Mishnah. All right. So first of all, we don't need to throw everything out.
Good to know that because I
Right?
was starting to go nuts and separating. I don't know. It's a lot.
But what I would recommend, especially at the beginning, is stick to the foundation, the fundamentals. The Rambam, the Kuzarri, today they're already highly accessible. The Rambam's a little bit more difficult, but Kuzari is a very easily accessible. Develop the filters. And I'm going to say a lot of people believed in the Kabbalah. Some of our greatest Chachamim in the past 500, 600 years, right? They believed in the Zohar. And they were great, tremendous Chachamim. Now, you have to understand the past 500, 600 years, even 700 years, they didn't have internet like today. They didn't have access to critical editions and old manuscripts. That's part of the, how do you call it, the curse of the Galut. And so they didn't have the same tools that we have today to properly assess all of these writings. So if someone said that the Zohar was written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and became kind of like mainstream, most people accepted it at face value without being able to examine it. And some of these people were tremendous chachamim. So you can't throw out everything someone said just because he believed in the Zohar. What we do need to do is study the Torah from the bottom up, from the foundations up, and that will help us develop proper filters for when we read people's writings, these great Chachamim's writings, who mix in both Kabbalistic mysticism and also more we call it halachic and philosophical rationalism and other things. One of my favorite Chachamim is Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeg, lived like 200 years ago in Italy. He was a very, very strong critic of anyone criticizing the Kabbalah. He was also super intellectual, and he was recognized by many universities. So I say, stick to people who have verifiable wisdom, right? If they only have esoteric wisdom that's unverifiable, you have no way to know if they're making things up or if they're speaking true wisdom. Someone like Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, right? Who wrote commentaries on Sefer Yetzirah, and he was very well-known Kabbalist, right? He's also a physicist, right? He has verifiable wisdom. I really enjoy reading Rav Aryeh Kaplan, even his Kabbalistic stuff. So does that answer your question?
Yes, at least it's organizing some thoughts right now. Thank you, Rav. Thanks.
Okay. By the way, I'm sure almost every other teacher you'll ask in Penine Or will disagree with me. But I think my opinion is a valid opinion, and you should at least be exposed to it.
It's good to have
And
different opinions so
and
we can
everyone
develop
is
our own
welcome to do
opinion.
their own investigation and figure out for themselves. They agree with me or disagree with me, we'll still be friends.
Yes, to do our own investigation is good to have a few opinions from our teachers and rabbis. Is good.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank
but mine is the correct one. Any other questions? Anyone else?
Rav Sami,
Yes.
can you please repeat the name of your favorite Hamim from Italy? What was his name?
From Italy, I have a couple favorites.
The one you just mentioned 2 minutes ago?
Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeg.
Okay. And out of curiosity,
Originally
who's
wrote,
the
I
other
think
one?
most of his writings were in French, actually. French and
Oh, okay.
Italian. Oh, you're Italian, right?
Yes.
All right, so you could probably actually find his original writings either in French or Italian. But also in Hebrew and in English. There's Reggio, the Ramchal, right? He's also Italian and he's a
you.
Kabbalist.
Ramchal is great.
All right. Any other questions before
Thank
we
you.
finish? All right. Excellent. Okay. See you all. Oh, after Pesach, right? We have a break